Welcome into another episode of Everything is Logistics, a podcast for the thinkers in freight. I'm your host, Blythe Brumleve, and we are once again joined with the wonderful Grace Sharkey of Sirius XM radio fame, also FreightWaves fame. If you follow any kind of freight content, you have likely seen her stuff all over the place. She's no signs of slowing down. So welcoming into her second appearance on this monthly recurring thing that we are doing. I'm going once a month on her Sirius radio show, so she's coming once a month on here to talk all things freight tech. So Grace, welcome in.
I'm happy to be here. Excited. Yeah, we got this nice little trade off we're doing, just sharing each other's talents. Why not, right? That's relationship building. That's how you truly do it, brokers. So love it. It's been a fun time.
30 seconds in, there's already shade thrown at the brokers. Yeah. I love it. Now, I know I will say that our last episode that we did together, I have gotten the most comments from it comparative to any other episode, how much they loved that insight and sort of the back and forth between us. So we're just going to keep it rolling, right with, some of these controversial topics. So it's a little bit of a roadmap for the show. We're going to talk about AI because obviously it's just dominating the news. We're going to talk a little layoffs in freight, and then we're going to be talking about fakeness on social media and not in the way that you might think. So we're going to cover all of those topics. First of all, being AI. I don't have to, you don't have to be living under a rock in order to not notice all of the news and headways that have been made with this technology, not just essentially over the last few years, but really in the last few months from a lot of these big game players, Google and Microsoft being the top two dogs in that respect. So just in this week, so we have Google AI that's releasing their new sort of software that attaches to Google Docs, attaches to Gmail, attaches to pretty much their entire business suite of software. Microsoft has also done the same with their tool. Essentially what they're calling with artificial intelligence is that it's going to not just run in the background, it's going to be your co-pilot. And so that's what Microsoft has named it as your co-pilot. It's going to work with all of the Microsoft Word, Excel, and PowerPoints, all of that stuff. We've seen other models that have just released. ChatGPT 4, which is big in the news. Obviously, Microsoft is a big backer for them. I think ChatGPT or OpenAI, which is the owner of ChatGPT, gave away 50% of their company. Not gave away, but Microsoft invested in 50% of their company. So that's what's powering a lot of these moves that you're seeing on their side of things. Then two more that I think have a really larger impact is that Intercom chat products, which powers a lot of the chat bots on a lot of different websites. They release their own version of AI that powers on top of it. So it's a ChatGPT 4 on top of those Intercom chat bots. So you may already be communicating with ChatGPT and not really even know it yet. And then HubSpot's ChatSpot for CRM and content creation. Now that is a lot of things that I just threw at you. So Grace, sort of first thoughts, about all of this AI news that's coming down the pipeline.
I'd say my first thoughts are, I think it's AI's time to shine. I think that's why you're seeing so much of this investment take place right now. A lot of this technology, AI in particular, and I kind of want to talk about machine learning as well, because I think some people confuse machine learning tools sometimes with AI tools because they act behavioral sometimes the same. But in the AI aspect, I think what ChatGPT did and how they dropped this AI bomb on everyone. I mean, we talk about marketing, right, in this podcast. I mean, it was, I think, one of the best marketing plans I've ever seen. Something straight out of, well, I was going to say the TV show Silicon Valley, right? But Silicon Valley-esque as well, where it's like, let's almost create a movement of AI. And it worked. And now you have, I think, a lot of these companies who are already working on these tools, one, had to escalate their teams to get the product moving faster. I think the problem with AI is people look for perfection when you just kind of put something like ChatGPT out there, and you're probably going to learn a lot more from the 100 millions of users you just grabbed than the perfected model that you have. But I think that's why you're seeing a lot of these headlines of M&A action or more AI technologies being used, is because it's just a hot topic right now. And so I can assume that the sales reps behind a lot of these teams are having a hell of a time picking up the phone and people saying, wait, is this kind of like what that chat GPT is? Yeah, it's exactly that. Boom, bang, sign the dotted line, keep it moving forward. So I think that's we talked about in the past too, like when chat GPT came out and how if Microsoft clearly was going to invest in it, like how they could apply this to Bing and how Bing could technically become even more powerful and maybe in a way less ad driven than Google, right? And I think that's kind of like the discussions you're seeing now is like, where could AI go? How can it change a lot of the models? How can companies compete against each other? Just to sit back and say like Google until what, like a few months ago wasn't working on AI, I think is absolutely ridiculous. I think it's just this is the time for that application to shine. So let's drive the sales, let's drive our team towards this particular project as hard as we can and get that out there. So I'm happy to see it. I think that they've caused this like reaction where people are more invested in it. But a lot of this technology has been around for a while. I mean, the chat box thing, that aspect, right? When you look at in our industry, maybe like Hub Tech, right, has their little robot who's I can't remember his name right now off the top of my head. It'll come near the end of the show, I'm sure. But we've seen it even in our industry, this type of work being used. The chat box is probably the biggest one you've probably noticed. And I think that's what's cool is maybe now we're all getting an education on what AI we've been using this whole time.
And I think too, Microsoft really put it in a great verbiage when they said that AI has been a part of our society for a while
Yeah.
now, but now it's evolving into being your co-pilot, which I think is such a brilliant name for that. Google's is called Bard, which is just such a terrible name.
Yeah, that's
People don't want to say Bard.
like the names that are coming out are hilarious to me. And Tabby is the name of the robot. There we go. Just got
Yes, I was just on their website. I was gonna throw it out there. Tabby is a good really use case for so for folks who don't know how that works. Do you know how Tabby works within the hub tech functionality?
so. Here's the thing: AI is all about taking data and numerous pieces of data about your company or whatever you're working on, or a certain piece. For instance, Tabby would be putting together maybe all of your freight data, your rates, your carriers, your customers, etc., feeding into something like Tabby. And then Tabby can be used as almost like, yeah, like a co-pilot, right? In a way to say, hey, what would our rates be on this lane? It'd spit that out for you. Now, imagine putting that into a shipper's hands or a carrier's hands, right? Like, what lanes are most available in these regions and being able to spit that back out. Or what I think is more important, spit out what's most important for that interactor to know. So if it's like a carrier, right, it's gonna its intelligence model should be able to spit out the lanes that are most attracted to the carriers, but also the lanes that it needs to be most sold from the brokerage side. So that's where I think is really interesting, where this AI starts to take and almost model the human interaction or the decision making, right, that we would make as human beings. Now it does depend on what data you're putting in there. If you're putting the data in of a rep who makes terrible decisions, then then you've got a not so great system. I think we talked about this last time. That's kind of a lot of pushback chat GPT is getting right now, is because it's a little bit more liberally built, right? Like if you ask it to make certain jokes on certain presidents, it will lean against it for more leftist politicians, and lean right into it for more right. And so that, I'm sure, though, has to do with the data that it's using to generate those responses. So I think it's very important for people to understand the data that you're putting into these systems for this stuff to really truly work.
And I think you hit the nail on the head with the data aspect of it, is making sure you have clean data and then making sure that you have that constant process of feeding that good clean data and auditing that data, and then making sure that that is feeding into systems like the HubTech Tabby, and then also for ChatGPT, because they've released several different versions now. ChatGPT 4 just released this week. Have you had a chance to play around with it at all?
I, I so I have used ChatGPT this week. I don't think I've used the 4 model, but I mean, I don't use it for anything too intense, but um, sometimes if I need to like maybe be a little bit more creative, I've sometimes have dove into it. But no, I haven't. Is it cool? Have you played around with it?
Yeah, so to back it up a little bit, I've used a bunch of AI tools. I think I have a tab in my Google Chrome browser right now that if I open it up, all of my tabs just super shrink down, because I have so many AI tools that I want to try out. And so earlier in this year, especially in Q1, I was definitely like getting all the tools, and if it was cool for like one little thing, I was buying it. And I spent a lot of money on a lot of these different tools. So now I've done a little bit of consolidating on the tools that I'm going to use and how they fit into my processes. And with a lot of these tools, they were powered by ChatGPT 3 or ChatGPT 3.5, and they're okay. So for example, I use a tool called Otter.ai, which I
Yeah.
absolutely love. I think that it is one of those tools that every person should have, because it auto joins your meetings, it takes notes, it takes really good notes too. But
Yeah.
what you can also do is transcribe your podcast, and it gives you incredible, like you can match your speakers to what parts of the conversation that they're talking to, and then you can take an outline that Otter.ai creates, and it's a fantastic outline, and it helps me to go back in and find those key moments of the conversation that I maybe want to make a social media clip from, that I maybe want to use that quote in a social media promotion of that podcast. The next level where ChatGPT 4 comes in is you're able to submit that entire transcript to the system. It still has a character limit, which is annoying, but I think it has around a 20,000 character limit of a transcript that you can upload, and you can say summarize this into a blog post for me. So that is a really good use case. And then last night I was just playing around with it, because I have a few articles on Digital Dispatch that perform very well as far as SEO is concerned. It sends me about 12,000 visitors a month to the site alone, just because of these SEO driven articles. But they're also very old and they're a little outdated. I wrote them back in like 2018. So
Yeah.
what I did last night in ChatGPT 4 is I gave it a prompt. I said, pretend you are an editor that was just hired at a trucking company. Rework this article with the latest industry news. And I copied and pasted the old article right into ChatGPT 4, and it rewrote the entire article with news up until 2021. Now, if news has happened since before then, it's outside of that data set for ChatGPT 4, so you have to keep that in mind as well. But the way it remade the entire article, it sounded better than what I originally wrote it. And these articles have been on my to-do list for 6 months, and I did it in a night. And so I think that those are the kind of like use cases that you can find, especially in marketing. But the HubSpot CTO, Dharmesh, I forgot his last name, but he was debuting how the new tool ChatSpot can really be a superpower version of HubSpot, where he said it takes 21 clicks right now to go into HubSpot and to send an email to a person that you're trying to sell to. 21 clicks. And ChatSpot has reduced that to 2 clicks. And so it's these kind of minor improvements, I think, just are game changers for folks like us who wear a lot of hats and have to do a lot of things.
A 1,000%. I think that's where it's really been interesting for me, is to like see if it can create more creative titles. That's I hate. I literally just texted you about this. I hate titles. There's like the I panic. It's been a problem since the longest I can even think. Like even in college, just like I would spend the first 10 minutes of a finals exam, just like, what are we gonna name this thing? Like, or even be like, fine, just figure it out at the end, and then the last 10 minutes, I'm just having a panic attack too. And so for me, I've like used it to create like different types of titles based off of maybe the information that I'm feeding it as well. And so I think it's definitely a game changer. It's definitely added more time into my life, and I think that's what your examples on like updating and like rejuvenating a lot of like content. Wow, there were small, medium-sized businesses. Like, can you imagine like how much easier this is going to allow them to compete on a scale against the big Fortune 500 marketing teams that can throw away money on Super Bowl commercials, right? It's like that's what I think is really cool, and I see this type of stuff. I don't. Of course, we all kind of ponder, oh, look, now these kids in college or high school are going to cheat on papers. Sure, that'll get fixed out. That'll get fixed quickly because at the end of the day, the thing about generative AI is about what you're generating into it. So, right, you take your blog, which already is your work and what you've done, you put it into the AI and it spits it out using your own framework, right? Which is like, it's still your thoughts. So I think, I know, I just get really excited when I see tools like this come out that I know are going to allow small players to compete with large players. And once again, diffuse this barrier to entry that might be holding people back from entering or becoming an entrepreneur, or entering our space than maybe in the past.
Even with, like business ideas, like I have a million ideas for websites. I'm not a coder. I know a little bit of HTML and that's it. I know what, quote unquote, enough to be dangerous. That's it. But for
Yeah.
these types of platforms, you can, in the ChatGPT 4 demo, there was a back of the napkin drawing of a website that this guy did, and he took a picture of it, put it into ChatGPT 4, and it made the website for him. And it was a joke website, like not a joke, like kind of a joke. I don't know, playing on words here. But
Yeah.
the example was, he said, I want to have a joke website, spit out a joke. Here's the button for it to generate the joke, and here's where the result will land. And ChatGPT 4 built that for him. So the creative energy that you're going to be able to unleash, I think just levels, like you said, levels the playing field for a lot of these, just smaller businesses, smaller creators. I think it has the opportunity, especially with these image generators and video generators as well, to revolutionize a lot of, say music videos or movies to an extent. If you want to make a movie right now, you have to have somewhere between 200 million and 500 million for the entire budget and marketing budget for that movie. That's why we're seeing so many remakes. So
Yeah.
with this technology, like in 5 years, I do not see a situation where, or I see a situation where these creators are going to be able to use these tools and make that creative work and bring back the storytelling, the power of that storytelling to a lot of these different creative mediums.
Yeah, I just saw a clip of them using this type of system on, I think the movie's called Fall, the one where the two girls like climb up on this giant like pole in the middle of a desert, and it's like, I think their rope falls down, so they're like, they don't know how to get off. I haven't seen it yet. I want to watch it, but they use the Chat GPT work or some type of AI software to create a PG-13 version of the rhetoric,
Oh,
right?
wow.
Using the girl's face, using her voice, they're able to go through the whole movie and make it go from like an R-rated movie to PG-13. And that kind of stuff is so cool. Imagine like how much more you could even make in a movie and how much you save because they didn't have to reshoot it, right? They didn't have to come up with a second script. They didn't have to produce that physically themselves. And now you opened up an audience that's much larger than the one you originally were hoping for. So, I mean, even apply that to like the music industry and those ratings and TV as well. I think it's just really interesting to watch how. I think that's what's really cool too. Is like what you're saying, how it builds actual sites and actually builds all the algorithms that you would need to get something done. I'm excited to see maybe how many more apps pop up using this type of stuff, because it could be really cool or really awful because it's just a bunch of apps that no one needs. But we'll soon find out.
Yeah, there was another point that I saw this company called Hour One, I believe, that they will take your entire, so if you feed the system like a bunch of videos, like say for creators like us, we could feed that system a bunch of videos of us talking just like this, and it'll be able to synthesize our voice and synthesize our appearance, and where in the future we'll just be able to write a script probably powered by ChatGPT, and then it will take our voice, our image, our looks, and be able to create content for us without us ever having to do our hair and makeup and get
Yeah.
on camera and things like that, which is crazy.
Yeah, you go check out, for everyone listening, go check out Thomas Watson's show Loaded and Rolling. This last week he did his first segment, all explaining the drayage system, basically using his own voice and Chat GPT. And it was funny because it's spot on, sounds like Thomas, except for there are small things, right? Like it couldn't say chassis right, it kept saying chassis in a really strange way. But like AI works, the more data that you put into it, the more that it hears the word chassis, it'll catch up and learn itself. So, but it was really cool to kind of see that, and especially because I mean it was a good 3-minute clip. So it's like, wow, Thomas, you just 10% of your show didn't even need you, man. So it's like he's
That's a really cool
the
use
robot
case.
job that he doesn't want anymore.
I'll make sure. What about? I'll make sure to link that in the show notes so folks can check it out. Any other cool use cases that you've seen with AI? Maybe not Chat GPT related, but any other AI cool tech that's going on within the freight space.
I think I'm just excited. Like I said, I think people are on this like high of it, right? I'm excited to see where companies maybe start to put it into their operations. And what makes me fearful, and I want people to truly understand this, the generative AI, which is what this is, it's not, there's two forms of AI. There's the into the future AI, where people sit and assume that this computer has gotten smarter than the human being and it can outthink us and move forward. Generative AI, it's just algorithms that are taking in context, data, text, images, audio, etc., and it's training those algorithms to become smarter. But those algorithms have to be built by something still. And so what I think sometimes concerns me is maybe small and medium-sized companies out there saying, wow, like we could easily take this and we could apply it to our booking process or how we negotiate with our customers, and it could bring a lot of savings. That is a true statement, that could happen. But it also is going to take an extreme amount of human interaction to make sure that gets done appropriately, which I hope people are afraid of AI taking their jobs, because AI doesn't get smarter without you involved with it. And two, I think there's a lot of people who have really dirty data and don't realize that if they apply this technology to those certain operations, it will take them probably steps and steps back. So here's a perfect example. Let's say that you are booking a load in your system and it can go on a flatbed or a step deck, and you just keep it in the TMS system as a flatbed or step deck. You send the rate count out, et cetera, et cetera. Well, taking the extra step of saying this load today was on a flatbed, that could be the little piece that ends up helping the generative AI become smarter. So again, it's like I just want people to understand that the way that they're creating their data, exchanging their data, and quantifying their data can really hurt maybe their AI experience in the future. So I just hope that there aren't people like blowing up AI technology firms right now saying we need this, that don't have a CTO or CIO behind them. I think there's a lot of other steps that companies can take to make themselves more efficient. I think machine learning tools can be a lot easier. And machine learning is different from AI in the fact that machine learning learns autonomously through past data. So it's not being, it's almost like it's watching you and it's performing how you want it, where AI is almost built to perform in a certain way. It's machine learning is like probably a little bit more closer to that robots taking over situation.
Hmm.
But both of those are going to take a lot of leadership to be smart leadership to be implemented appropriately in a business. So as excited as I get about these tools, and I think that we will see them in the future, and I think a lot of visibility players out there who are just basically data pipes at this point will probably be the first to offer these tools in a really usable manner. I don't think because of how far away transportation already is with technology, we're not to the AI stage yet. So that's just like my personal views. Do I think it could be so applicable in this industry? Yeah. Do I think that there's just so many data hurdles that we're still looking to overcome? 1,000%.
Yeah, but very well said, and I think that's a good segue into our next segment where, unfortunately, when a lot of tech advancements happen, there's a readjustment period. We're seeing it with not a little bit in the freight tech space, a little bit within just freight in general. And that's what comes to layoffs. And it happened majorly at, a lot of big tech companies, obviously like Twitter, Microsoft, Facebook. I think it was closer to in fourth quarter of last year. And so as we kind of come into the new year, the first, sort of fiscal quarter of this year, there have been a lot of layoffs within mostly the technology space and mostly within the brokerage space. Is that accurate to say within the freight industry as a whole?
I would definitely say so. I think in the carrier space, there's not really layoffs. It's more of owner operators, right? Like
Hmm.
leaving and going back to large firms for a more maybe stable lifestyle at the moment. But yeah, it's definitely the broker and it's definitely the technology companies. I mean, it's really you want to look at it almost like the way that our economy works, right? We were all stimulated quite literally with cash in our pockets. Companies as well. PPP loans helped a lot of companies grow during those times, and they know it, whether or not they want to admit that. And so, uh, of course, supply chains were a huge issue. So all of these companies had more and more customers knocking on their door, more calls to make, better opportunities. Well, we need employees to make sure those calls are being captured. We, as a care, as brokerages, right? I'm sure shippers were just pounding on their doors looking for help. Well, we need people to answer these calls. Well, guess what? Shippers don't need your help as much anymore. Like it's just, it's the capacity they have right in front of them. Now it's dependent on how they're working. Some might be working with more of a 4PL relationship with a lot of these brokers, and the brokers are probably experiencing a little bit more fun as well. But uh, we overhired, just like our economy, right? I don't want to say we overstimulated, but we got a lot of stimulation that we wouldn't have had if it wasn't the case of where we're at in the pandemic, and of course making sure our economy kept moving at the time. So uh, I most will say in the most marketing way possible, like we overhired for what we need, and especially for such a flip, right? It's the
The
same.
pendulum is swinging
Yeah,
back.
so it's not like it's swaying back to normal, it's swaying back to way worse. So it's even more employees than they probably need. um, do I think that any of these companies are going to be left behind because they maybe let go of too many people? Probably not. I mean, a lot of them, they wouldn't be letting people go, and some of them are still hiring, right? And I mean, it's tough because during December, during the end of the year, it is normal for companies to look back and get ready for tax season and get their books straight and figure out, okay, who exactly do we need on this team? And uh, unfortunately, it was a lot of overhiring added onto that, and it came out the way that it's looking like today. Now you don't see it in employment data. Now, the way that we get employment data, I do sometimes fear that maybe people have multiple jobs. That's why we don't see it as much. But people are finding jobs once they are being let go. So that's the positive thing about all of this is at least there's a really great job economy right now for these people to go to. But it is interesting to kind of see you went from like the employee having so much power, right? Remember the time where everyone was just like leaving their jobs or really holding their employers by the neck saying, I'll leave if you give me more money. Well, yeah, I wonder who was the first on the chopping block when that time came, right? So it is a crazy swing, and hopefully people learn from it. I mean, it's a cool thing about capitalism and the way our economy works. It will continuously swing like that, and um, for those out there that unfortunately lost their jobs, hopefully you did find something already. But that's why it's important when you do take these jobs to figure out exactly like what is their plan, why are they hiring as much as they are now, and figure out maybe your career path in that role, or maybe deciding this is I'm going to be here as long as this opportunity is here for me, and I'll figure out what I want to do after this.
And I think that there's a psycholo this happened in the tech space. So Elon caught, a bunch of shit
Yeah.
online when he laid off a lot of Twitter employees, but it was a lot of bloat that he laid off. And they say it's like a psychological thing with companies, or that Elon has taken that he because he's the first to lay off a bunch of people in a bloated company, in a bloated industry like tech is, that he took the PR hit. And so it made it so much easier for Microsoft and Facebook and some of these larger companies too to say, Elon's right. And we're going to do the same thing for our companies, but we're not going to take the PR hit. Do you see some of that happening in freight, or is that just kind of a false equivalence?
I've seen people take different routes towards announcing it. And I will say, for example, one in particular, Convoy. Convoy actually reached out to me about their layoff situation and worked with us as a news company to say, hey, we want to make this announcement. We want to let you know why first. We want to address this as politely with your audience, our customers, and our employees as best as possible. And then I think there was others who really shied away from it and said, hey, like we're not how can we lay people off when we're still hiring people? That's my favorite comeback.
Hmm.
Well, how can you do that? You just did. I don't know. So I don't know how to explain that to you, but I think that's the tough part is that a lot of people like want to push back against it and say like it's not layoffs. We're just kind of either restructuring the company, which I will say is I think a lot to do with a lot of these tech companies looking for a better path towards profitability, right? So but none of them would say that on a press release. But it's true. It's they need to start making profit, and if there's any extra,
Imagine that.
yeah. And here's the thing: when you raise a lot of money too, which a lot of these tech players did, your investors want to see it go towards something. They're not giving you $100 million to sit in a bank somewhere. That's like the literal like opposite of what that money is supposed to be doing. So sometimes they overhire on purpose, right? So it's like if you join a company after they just raised $100 million, like if there's a time where the economy gets tough and those investors want to see profit, they're gonna let some of you go. I mean, there was even uh, a leader in the tech space who was like telling me, he's like, we have a lot of employees, and to be honest with you, Grace, pulling data from like their computers and stuff, like some of these guys weren't even working. It's like, so I'm a bad guy for like letting some of these people go, and it's like, no, you're not. But I think people look at, it's funny because we don't want to treat businesses as people, right? Like, I think a lot of times that's brought up in Congress. Like, should we treat companies as a physical human being? And most people would say no. But, when it comes to these decisions, now we want to treat them like a human and say they're a bad guy. Well, that's business being business. And I think that's like, I hate writing layoff stories because I do like to show empathy towards the people that are let go. but a business is a business. And if you're going into a time like we are now, I mean, even prior to the bank situations we've seen in the last weekend, this isn't a time where I would want to be overextended. And I'm not going to raise money anytime soon, because if I do, I'm probably going to lose more percentage than I had been in the past. I'm going to have to hand over more of my company. So I need to be very, very smart about how I maneuver. And it's just the unfortunate part about it. But the positive part is that we live in a capitalistic, also democratic society where anyone can become a person that has to make these tough decisions every day. So where I do see people being let go, I do get excited, because most leaders, even in our tech space, who have built really great companies, have either been fired or let go even in the past, right? So maybe we get some really cool innovators out of this experience, but I'd say it's business is business. And that's what we saw happen here. And it is unfortunate. And it's why I like being the content creator that I am, because it's a little bit different of a space than having to build out these software and technologies.
For sure. And I think that, there is definitely a fine line to walk where you're trying to look at like the business use case of the numbers and the output with some of these employees. And I'm blanking on the CEO who actually said this, but he said that I'm paraphrasing here, but he said that you should be cutting your staff by about 10% every single year.
Yep.
Otherwise, you're just going to keep the dead weight of the people who are not, really just hungry to work. I kind of play both sides a little bit, because I do empathize with the employees that, like my brother, for example, he wants to show up exactly on the dot of the hour that he's supposed to be there. And then he wants to leave on the exact dot on the hour that he is supposed to leave. And he doesn't want to give a company any more than what he has contractually, agreed to. And I fully agree with that. But then on the flip side, I just think that there is a passion and a drive with some kind of employees like me who just works crazy, and you have to almost like force me to shut it off. So I think that there is a balance to be made between both of those things. And it's a transition for a lot of workers. And it's a transition for a lot of these businesses who are used to just getting VC money, hand over fist for years, sometimes really over the last decade, and not having to worry about being profitable. Now you have to worry about being profitable. And guess what? That's what a lot of small and medium-sized businesses have had to do this entire time. They don't get the luxury of having that VC money pumped in, or stimulus money, at every beck and call anytime something, minorly goes wrong. So I think it's a transition for, just the economy in general. And I think, as we have about 10 minutes left, I really want to get into this next topic, because it is a part of a transition. And that's TikTok, your favorite subject, my favorite social media app. And so, for those who don't know, Grace is anti-TikTok. She does not want any kind of Chinese spyware on her phone.
Yeah, it's not that I'm like anti-TikTok in the way that I don't think it exists or has a value out there. It's a business; they all have values. But I find it very hilarious that the Chinese balloon situation scares people, but that TikTok doesn't. So that's where my anger comes from. I just want to plead that case, because I'm not going to pretend that TikTok doesn't exist, but I will not download it on my phone, no matter.
And the reason, and I think a lot of people share that same sentiment, that they don't want, sort of spyware on their phone. I think the other side of it, where I tend to sort of lean, is that it has an incredibly addicting algorithm, and it is really good and it's really powerful. And you have to tell yourself to step away from the app, because literally you will spend an hour and a half, 2 hours on it, and you won't even realize it. After a little while, there's supposed to be a guy or a woman that like pops up on the screen, tells you, oh, you've been scrolling for too long. Maybe go get some water, take a break.
Oh, really? That's hilarious.
Yes. And every time I see it now, I'm like, shut up. Don't tell me what to do.
Oh, really? That is...
And I'll just keep scrolling.
It's like the Netflix, like, are you still there? And it's like, yeah, I have watched 8 hours of that.
Mind your business.
Yeah, exactly. Whoa, that's cool. No, it's... Yeah, go for it.
Well, I was going to say just I guess on the China versus U.S. thing, like I do from the matter of like a data perspective, a lot of this anti TikTok and TikTok should be banned has actually come from Mark Zuckerberg over at Facebook. He has a very large incentive in order to get this app out of here, and he's been selling our data to China for years,
Yes.
and so it's that aspect of it. But within the country of China itself, their kids are only allowed to go on their TikTok version for 40 minutes a day. And it is you can there's no parental settings that you can switch on and off to make that and to make that setting disappear. So they have 40 minutes only. And then they're primarily shown math and science and educational materials, which is a complete opposite of what's being shown to Americans. And so with Americans, it's much more, from what I understand, it's very much more open, wide open. So that has a good and a bad use case where the good is you can learn about stories like East Palestine, the train derailment that happened up in Ohio. I did not see any of that news on any other sort of mainstream legacy media channel, on any other social media channel. I saw it first on TikTok. And that's where I think, some of the, I guess, US media coverage falls short. And I can get news that the US maybe doesn't want to use to manipulate me with. So I kind of see it from like both sides. Like I know that China has an incentive to keep me on their app and almost like make me dumber by watching stupid videos. But then on the flip side, I do see a lot of different videos that I don't see on American founded social media channels.
Yeah, it's kind of it's the same thing, right? Like Netflix and stuff. Like you can use different VPN software
True.
to see it. It's interesting. I and this is like this is a fact. This isn't like my personal belief, but the Chinese are so far ahead of us when it comes to AI technology or
Hmm.
any of these like app based like technologies that are using right how I'd say almost like this is kind of the example of machine learning, like using what you like next, right? What you're clicking, what you're finding valuable, and making the next decision off of that. The Chinese are incredibly far ahead of us. I'm looking for this because there it is. Uh, it was I want to say in 2018, the National Security Commission of Artificial Intelligence put out a 750-page report, all on just warning the United States government about how far away we are from China and how
Hmm.
if they do want to start using this technology right in a way that could be dangerous to us, it could be very harmful, and we have basically at this point it's kind of like global warming. Like, we have no way of catching up unless we put all of our eggs in one basket and really focus on this. And
Hmm.
I think that's I wrote about it in an article I was doing on a chip company out of China who was growing pretty quickly, and it just I think that's kind of not where my fear is with TikTok or anything like that, but I it's important to know how much more powerful some of our trade partners are at this type of technology, and how it can just easily be skewed and make it look like something's fun and used against us. And when I say used against us, I mean there's so many different ways that the Chinese are spying on us. And we're like I'm not saying like TikTok is the only way. I mean I post my location all the time, even on Instagram. So Zuckerberg's got that info to them too. And but I think it's important to like understand at least like who has access to this stuff, know exactly like what you're doing, and just be aware of why the technology's here, how powerful it actually is, and maybe in the future who could really hold some really intense trade power if it was ever needed in a specific way. Now China is falling population wise, and they've got a lot of other issues on their back, but it is kind of interesting to just see in this particular space, like in creating apps and things of that nature, how powerful they become.
Yeah, because I mean, if you control someone's attention, then you can control a lot of their lives. And I don't think that the majority of U.S. residents have really prioritized and took control of their own algorithm, of their own what you choose to digest, because what you choose to digest as far as information and social media channels and whatever content is on those channels, that does affect your workday. And I sort of come from I guess the generation of like where video games were blamed for violent behavior. And now as an adult, like I see where some of those points were being made, where you can have certain situations that you're just conditioned to,
Yeah.
and you get fed this information over and over again. We, from an evolutionary standpoint, we have not been able to keep up with the amount of information that we intake now. And so it's sort of, I guess, to bring this conversation sort of full circle, we really do have to be, cautious about who is feeding us information, where they're feeding us, how much time we're spending on it, and then how that shapes the rest of society. I mean, if China is limiting the amount of time that their kids can spend on the app, then they know full well how powerful that algorithm is.
Yes.
And so I think that taking those cues from what they're doing with their kids, I would honestly like to see a lot of social media companies in the US take that cue, give parents more of a chance to control how much time that their kids are spending on these apps, and also control yourself, because I think for a lot of parents it's really easy to just get sucked into your phone for hours at a time. And hopefully, with all of this talk around banning TikTok and Facebook's role in it and all that stuff, that it brings to light the onus is really on you right now, because China's going to try to manipulate you, the US is going to try to manipulate you,
Yeah.
and you really have to take control of your feed and who you follow and why you follow them, and if they're bringing some kind of value into your life from an educational or entertainment standpoint. If they're not, you got to cut it out.
Yeah, it's why I muted Elon Musk on Twitter. Life has just been so much better since I've done it. So
You're taking control of your timeline and of your peace, which
Yeah.
is, there's all kinds of apps too that now exist that you can block social media from your phone, and even accessing it from your phone. I think the app is called Opal. I've started using that just because I know how addictive. Like, if you've ever deleted these apps off your phone, immediately after, I think for like the first day or two, count how many times you pick up your phone and you go to that app and you don't have a single reason to do so.
Yeah.
You're just doing it out of habit.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
All the time. Yeah.
All right, Grace, we just hit the 1 p.m. mark. I know we both got to go for a couple different appointments. So any last words? Where can folks follow, your work, all that good stuff?
Head to freightways.com or just Google Grace Sharkey at Freightways. I'll pop up, humble brag there. And yeah, you click my link tree and my LinkedIn, Twitter, wherever you follow that, and check out content. And we've got some cool content coming down the pipeline as well through Freightways. So we'll get some other stuff sent your way. You can't avoid me at this point, basically.
Heck yeah. And even more so, we love having you. So again, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your perspectives. Really fascinating talk and I'm sure, hopefully, a lot of people will find it interesting as well.
Thank you so much, Blythe.